This weekend, a new legal process began against one of the largest video game companies in the world. You already saw it in the title, so I don't have to keep the mystery much less. This weekend, Sony PlayStation was sued again, and in today's video, I'm going to tell you what this lawsuit is about. And how can it be that if this turns out well for us, things end up changing, or at least they change? Will the change in Europe eventually spread globally? It's uncertain. But let's take it one step at a time. I'm going to explain what's happening with PlayStation in the Netherlands, and then we're going to analyze the issue in depth. Welcome to a new video here on Big Data News. Surely you've wondered at some point, how can it be that digital games cost the same as physical games? Yes, in the digital world, one would think that the cost should be less, since there's no need to manufacture the box, nor print it, nor burn the disc, nor distribute it, nor ship it, nor all of that. In other words, should digital games be cheaper than physical ones? However, we know that this does not happen, that many times we see that the prices remain completely the same. In fact, if the prices of physical ones increase, the digital ones also increase at the same time, which should not be the case either. And this has been generating frustration and scrutiny among players for a long time, especially in cases where physical offers end up being more discounted than digital offers. Another case that makes no sense. These are questions we all ask ourselves. This led to people in Holland organizing and filing a class action lawsuit specifically against PlayStation. In this country, in Holland, a group of video game buyers decided to take matters into their own hands. The Dutch Foundation Massakid Consument, I don't know how to pronounce it. It has filed a class action lawsuit against Sony, accusing them of keeping PlayStation Store game prices artificially high. The foundation has filed a class action lawsuit against Sony, alleging that PlayStation has inflated the prices of digital games on the PlayStation Store, which has led Dutch consumers to pay up to 47% more compared to physical versions of the same titles on PlayStation and other platforms. The foundation I was mentioning, whose name I can't pronounce for a change, is a Dutch non-profit foundation that organizes lawsuits against companies and businesses that suddenly they believe they are harming their users and consumers. This foundation I'm mentioning is the same one that recently last year brought a lawsuit against Google over the same issue on Android, a lawsuit that has not yet been resolved. The foundation argues that the PlayStation Store is the only way to buy games on PlayStation, and that Sony is abusing its dominant position in its own market and is manipulating prices. And that if you could buy digital PlayStation games through other stores, then this wouldn't be so bad. But why against PlayStation and why not against any other platform? Well, unlike other platforms, like on PC, where you can buy the same game in different digital stores. On PlayStation, if you want to buy a digital game, the only option you have is the PlayStation Store. There's no more. And that means that digital games are regulated solely by PlayStation, and not even the publishers can sell you games directly without having to go through the regulations of the PlayStation Store. On PC, you can purchase the latest FC25 from various stores. And maybe you don't want to buy it on Steam. Do you want to buy it on Epic? Or do you want to buy a code through a platform like Eniba or something like that? Which gives the possibility that there are different prices. And until 2019, it was like that on PlayStation. Until 2019, you could buy a key for a PlayStation game in some digital store, but Sony banned it from 2019. They said that was no longer going to be the case, and from that moment they started having legal problems in various places around the world, precisely because of monopolistic practices. I won't compare what happens on Nintendo or Xbox. Today, we're specifically talking about PlayStation, because the Netherlands decided to sue PlayStation and not Xbox or Nintendo, which have similar practices. But we're not going to get into comparisons. We're going to talk about the PlayStation case so we don't get sidetracked. The issue is this. To sell a game through the PlayStation Store, the publisher has to set a price that might be $60. Let's use it as an example. From that price, they must deduct 30% from their earnings, as 30% is withheld. The PlayStation Store, because it's their own platform and they have their own store and so on. The publisher's earnings from a game suddenly dropped from $60 to $40, with $30 being kept. To the PlayStation Store, well, what happens if that publisher would say, well, you know, I don't need either the advertising or the distribution of the PlayStation Store. I'm going to sell the keys to my users directly, and I'm going to sell the game for $50. That way I make more profit and the user pays less. In an ideal world, right? Would the publisher think of that? Well, they can't do it. You can on PlayStation. The only keys that are distributed to redeem games are those given to us content creators or the press to play a game. And isn't there a real key market that the same publisher can manage and distribute? Ultimately, PlayStation is the sole manager of digital video game prices on the PlayStation Store. It makes sense because it's your platform, you created it, maintain it, and have the story going. But there comes a time when it becomes so massive. There are so many millions of consoles around the world, and games are digital products distributed by many companies. They start to say, well, you know what I would like? I could sell within your platform, right? And these moments of friction start to arise, moments of friction that wouldn't be so serious if they weren't claiming that in Holland. I don't know how things are there, but that's what these people claim. The prices of digital games are up to 47% more expensive than physical games. And from there comes the whole problem of digital versus physical prices. I don't know what the price relationship of games in Holland is because I don't live in Holland. I have no idea if you go to a little shop in Holland and get cheap physical games or what the heck. But apparently something like that is happening. Alarms went off and they started saying, how can it be that only PlayStation runs this store? And that it doesn't allow anyone to sell on its platform through other channels? As I was saying, the most serious part of all this is that the lawsuit alleges that Sony is inflating prices. By the way, at least in the Netherlands. I want to clarify again, I have no idea what the situation is there specifically, but that's what the lawsuit says. And this foundation that I mentioned, do they believe they can prove that the games are being inflated on purpose by up to 47%? They highlight that despite digital distribution having lower operating costs, well, these savings are not reflected in the consumers. Here's another point. If it's cheaper to distribute digitally, why isn't it cheaper for me to buy digitally? The foundation argues that this practice is illegal, especially in, and here's the important part, the European Union, as large companies should not abuse their position to gain more profits at the expense of consumers. If the courts rule in favor of Sony, it is likely that everything will continue as it has been. In fact, it's likely that Sony may have to pay a fine or something like that, and that's it. Everything will continue as usual and players will not have alternative options to acquire digital games on PlayStation. On the other hand, if the lawsuit is successful and Sony is forced to change its policies, at least in the Netherlands, this could open the door for the same thing to happen in other regions as well. Because the lawsuit, although originated in the Netherlands, refers to the legislation of the entire region of the entire European Union. And Sony could be forced to allow other digital stores to sell games for PlayStation. Or even publishers could sell games directly to other digital stores or to users. And lastly, this could also put pressure on other sectors of digital entertainment to do the same. A similar case occurred in the EU with iPhone, resulting in the EU's victory. And now, Apple has to allow you to install applications from other stores on their phones, and in addition, you can delete pre-installed applications whenever you want. Let's see if the European Union beat Apple. Maybe they will win too. To PlayStation if this transcends, which could result in us going back to that time when we could buy PlayStation keys through other stores. It occurred primarily in the United States, not in all regions. But surely, if you are used to buying keys or visiting stores like Eneba and many others, you may have noticed that there are no keys for PlayStation. For new games, the buying and selling of keys is a scam with a shady business surrounding it. That's another topic. Where do the keys come from these days? What's going on, what's not going on is another matter. Here we are talking about the legal implications of not allowing anyone to sell anything on your platform, even if they are not your products. Because if on PlayStation you could only play PlayStation games and not anyone else's, well, maybe there wouldn't be any kind of problem. Because they are your damn games. The issue is always with third-party games, especially when there's such a price difference, especially in the European Union. Because in Europe, a new game costs you 80 euros, and in the United States it costs you $70. The difference is significant, not in all games, but there are specific games where it is. So are you already charging more for games in that region? Also, there's no price distinction between digital and physical formats. And furthermore, they can prove, even with just a handful of games, that digital is more expensive than physical. And that somehow you're regulating the prices in your favor in the region because there is a higher purchasing power. You're screwed because they're going to censor you. I ask for censorship, please. They're going to do it to you like this, Sony. Are they going to do it to you? Put in, take out, put in, take out, put in, take out. For now, it's just a demand that's on the table. We don't know how it might end up. Sony lost a similar lawsuit in the United States, and all it ended up doing was compensating players. It also had one like that in the United Kingdom, which I think has not been resolved yet. And after they have withdrawn the keys in the United States, did they also receive some lawsuits and stuff like that? I don't remember anymore. It's been a long time, but nothing ever ended. But on this occasion, having the European Union, after beating Apple, well, there might be hope. It wouldn't be bad at all, a little bit of competition within the prices of the PlayStation Store. Put me in the comments, what do you think? And if the keys return to the digital stores, would you buy games through digital stores? Did you buy games through platforms like Eneba and all those? Or did you never trust them? Put me in the comments because I'm interested in knowing, and of course subscribe if you like the news and a little video game gossip. Have a good week, see you next time, bye.